Hey, I'm Ori, and today I'm going to rank the Crimson Vow Limited Archetypes. So first, we're going to rank Blue-Red. I'm going to put this in the A tier. So what makes Blue-Red such a high tier deck? And first, let's talk about what Red is good at. Red is good at nearly everything. It's got the most efficient removal in the format in its burn. It's got evasive menace creatures. It's got blood generation, which is phenomenal in red. That makes sure that you cap out at like 5 or 6 mana and then keep drawing action. So just a phenomenal color. But it does have one hole, and that's that its removal is only toughness based. It's burn. So how does blue fit into this equation? Well, blue has bounce spells. It's got freeze and sleep effects, and they're efficiently mana costed in this format. So red, very powerful development of their board, very efficiently costed interaction, and then blue helps it push through extra damage. And then it's got this non-creature spells matter theme with like Wandering Mind and Kessick Flame Breather, and both of them are phenomenal in the archetype. The deck can draw extra cards, filter through cards, develop out a high pressure board. It's just a very solid on average archetype. Next, we have red green. I'm going to place this in the A tier. So we already talked about what red is good at. So let's talk about what green is good and bad at. So green on average is kind of bad at the early game, but then it likes to ramp with Weaver of Blossoms into like a Flourishing Hunter or the Mariner, the 4/4 werewolf that flips into a 6/4 evasive creature on the back. So we can already see how these two come together. Red develops very well at every stage of the game, but it has that early burn spell to ensure that it gets to that mid and late game position where it's just dominating with these huge creatures. So it's just a very aggressive mid-range and aggro deck. It develops out strongly, it ends the game with strong creatures, and all its removal is instant, basically. So it can activate werewolves on demand in the werewolf archetype. It's just very reliable to make red-green work, and it's very good. Next, we have blue-green, which I'm going to place in the F tier. So we talked about what green is good at, and blue doesn't really mesh well with that. The tempo plays, they're best whenever you're aggressively developing out your board. Red does that. Blue and green, they don't aggressively develop out. They've got some good early plays, but on average, but the tempo plays are less good here unless you're in that really deep late game where you need to push through a little extra damage with your 6/6s or something. And the mill matters, the graveyard matters theme, not that good. Lantern Bearer is a great common, but on average, you're just not getting a lot from milling in this format. It's very tough to mill enough to get a high amount of value out of it. The disturbed creatures just don't compare to like flashback. We're not getting whole cards worth of value. We're getting like parts of a card worth of value. Next, we've got blue-black. So I'm placing this in the B tier. I think blue-black is quite powerful. Black has the catch-all comfy removal of this format that cleanly answers all the rares and late game bombs that you might see in this format at the common and uncommon slots. So very nice that black does that. And where blue-black kind of play together is black offers sacrifice fodder and blue offers exploiter. But the thing is that this deck is capable of doing the most card advantage, generating the most card advantage out of any deck in this format. The problem is that's basically all at the uncommon level. Like Skull Scob, this makes all of our exploiters, even if they exploit themselves, the value just goes through the roof. We get an army of zombies. Biolume Egg, like you go turn 3 egg, turn 4 stitched assistant. I scry 1, draw a card. I've got 7 power on the field. Your go. Like what? There's just so many powerful things this deck can do. The only problem is that's not accessible. The average blue-black deck is, if you're moving into blue-black, it's probably going to be pretty good, but it's not going to be that absurd level of blue-black that is possible. But sometimes it does get there, and it's just insane. So on average, the great blue-black decks aren't accessible, and you're kind of dealing with a very middling deck otherwise, but very competitive enough deck. Next, we have green white. I'm putting this in the F tier. So we already know what green is good at, what it's bad at. It's pretty straightforward. Now, white it doesn't excel at anything. It does a lot of things, but it doesn't excel. Part of it wants to play white weenies, and it's okay at that. Part of it wants to play life gain, and it's pretty good at that with the right cards. Part of it wants to have evasive flying beaters, but not too good of ones, just good enough. And then its removal is even middle of the road. Like, they're good catch-alls, but they've got caveats to them where it's like, not every situation, sorry. So white and green they don't have a strong curve out. They don't have a strong removal suite. Training is a bad mechanic that doesn't ever work out how you want it to. Most of the time, if your green-white deck is working, you're probably a pretty straightforward green deck. Next, we've got red-white, and I'm placing this in the C tier. So it's red and it's white. The thing is that what white offers is it offers those conditioned removal spells. But the problem is that they're not the most mana efficient of options, so it doesn't play a super great tempo game with white's removal options. But red does have access to burns, so you kind of have like your early game options and your late game answers to bombs. But other than that, like, I don't find much synergy between these two because they're just trying to like lean on red heavily to either develop out the board or to grind out the late game. And white just kind of fills in whatever playables it's got in the middle. I find when I'm in red-white, it's because I got good red stuff, I got good white stuff, and they're close enough to doing the same thing that I kind of put them together, and it's just like a really good stuff deck that can play either mid-range or develop out aggressively. Both those. So I like it. It's not over the top because it doesn't have any crazy synergies, but when it comes together, it's definitely playable. Definitely middle of the road, in my opinion. Next, we have green black, and I'm placing that in the D tier. So, why black and green? These colors together, they only really shine at the late game, and so that kind of hints towards you want to be a grindy deck, but grinding in Crimson Vow Limited isn't what you want to do because there's so many rares that bust the game wide open that you don't want your main game plan to be, well, I become powerful in the late game. That's not a winning game plan. That gives opponents way too much of a time to find their bombs. And, well, you have your own bomb. You can build this deck and grind out. Well, yes, but also bombs make any deck good. So there's that. Then there's a toughness matters theme, and it doesn't really pan out. Like, you can do some cute things with it, with some incrementally higher toughness cards, but it's not reliable enough that you could say, okay, I'm making an aggressive, like, toughness matters black-green deck. You do get hands that are like that sometimes, and it's quite fun, but it's not consistent, and I don't think in general the deck's strategy is where you want to be. All right, blue-white, here we go. Placing this in the B tier. So why B tier? Quite simply, this is blue-white flyers. I've been railing on white quite a bit this video, but this is where white is good. Why? Because blue is good at playing tempo. White has trouble pushing through last bits of damage, but white also offers disturbed creatures like Drogskull Infantry. So those are more powerful in this deck than any other because you've got evasive creatures. Traveling Minister pumping up a flyer, great clock. Putting +2/+2 on a flyer, great clock. Using blue to protect, great. Using blue to make tempo plays, to race, it's good. This is a very solid archetype. And Brian Comer is also worth mentioning. It's insane. It's definitely a reason to go into this archetype. You just want to race and be evasive. Simple as. Very good. Next, let's go with black-white. So I'm putting black-white in the C tier, and why this is because when we put black and white together, what we've got is a large possible assortment of removal. Black's good removal, white's good enough removal. And then we have not a very aggressive amount of options. So we're kind of saying that we're going to be trying to do a control deck type thing, and we're going to try grind people out. Again, this isn't the strategy that I think you want. I think these colors suffer a bit from how the format is. I think it should be much higher in a vacuum than I've ranked it, but you don't want to give your opponent time to play bombs. You want to aggressively develop out, and you don't need to dedicate yourself to a control deck to make your bombs better or more inevitable or something like that. So I just think that black-white is a victim of the format. Lastly, can you guess where black-red's going? Black-red's going in the S tier. So why the S tier? Well, simple. You've got your later black removal spells that catch everything. You've got your early burn spells, so we've already got the best removal in the format, but then we've also got some of the best evasive curve outs in red and black. We've got menace creatures all over the place. Just a very good do-it-all deck. And then to top it off, we've got black and red blood. So that means that we can grind with the best of them. So this deck is actually an amazing grinder and control deck, but it also can aggressively curve out and just kill you. So I think that alone puts it a step above every other deck, especially on average. This deck can quite come together quite readily with just the common level, honestly. It's a very good deck. Everyone's always fighting for it in drafts, which might be why it doesn't seem as accessible as I lead it on to be. Okay, so that was my rankings for the Crimson Vow Limited Archetypes. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe, so that tells me that you enjoyed this and I make more content just like it for you. Now, also, I've got a set schedule for my Twitch for the time being. I've got Monday through Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Central Time to around 10:30, so we get 2 to 3 drafts in. And if you want to come by, say hi sometime, that'd be great. Anything else, leave something in the comment section for me below. Any questions about the format? I'd be glad to expand on anything I mentioned in this video. I'll see you next time.